Could this be the most divisive batch of Elijah Craig barrel proof ever? Today we're taking a look at batch B522. So let's get to it. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch, and thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So I am super excited today because I was able to get my hands on Elijah Craig barrel proof batch B522. It's always a great day when you can get an Elijah Craig barrel proof. I specifically was able to get this one for 65 bucks, so right around retail, which is amazing. It's 12-year-old, non-chill filtered whiskey from a great distillery. So overall, pretty much always a buy for me, no matter what I hear about the batches. For this one in particular, batch B522, I've been hearing some rumblings that it's gonna be kind of divisive. Some say it's a very easy sipper and sweet, and people will love that. Others are saying it lacks the punch Elijah Craig usually has, but had to see for myself and need to taste it and see how it hits my own palate. All right, so quick stats here. We are looking at something that is 121 proof, so 60.5% alcohol. Again, kind of continuing that trend for Elijah Craig to be a little bit lower in proof, but as always, like I said, it's that 12-year-old non-chill filtered stuff. I know that the A122 for a lot of people was a sort of heavy hitter, return to what Elijah Craig does best. And so I'm really excited to get into B522 here. I saw none of the A122s at all in my area. So happy to get my hands on this B batch. And let's dive in now. So as I open this up, I do just want to say that if you like Elijah Craig barrel proof, smash that like button. And if you're liking all the content coming out of the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Really helps the channel grow and helps me know what specific kind of content to keep creating for you guys. All right, everybody, we are ready for a cork pop here. Let's hope it's a good one. Cheers. All right, pretty nice, pretty solid. All right, first pour here. So this is a fresh crack with the neck pour. I'll give this some time to open up as well, but wanted to share in my first impressions and first experience with you guys. And I seem to have forgotten that I am left-handed, so I'm going to switch these like I normally have them so I can drink with my dominant hand. And let's get into the nose now. Wow, okay. Powerful nose. Very sweet. Lots of like lighter brown sugar, so not so much like a darker brown sugar, but like a sugar cookie with that dusting of light brown sugar on top, that kind of bright sweetness. There's some oakiness, a little touch of potential tobacco, but that like sweet oak is shining through for me. Heck of a lot of vanilla. Just that good cherry note coming through that's really sweet and prominent. I mean, it's like a brown sugar, cherry, vanilla, little touch of tobacco, a lot of sweet oak nose. So very inviting, powerful, and sweet. Not astringent at all. Like I'm not getting a sense that there's a huge ethanol presence here. And it's mostly just inviting. That I got a little bit more of like a barrel char, so just a hint of it. And then there's a good woodiness, good oakiness. You can tell that there's age on it, but that bright brown sugar sweetness and cherry and vanilla is really inviting. All right, let's get into the palate, everybody. This is my first sip of the day too, so it's probably gonna hit me a bit, but cheers. Okay, so a lot of what was there on the nose did transfer over to the palate. Front palate was pretty light, but I got a lot of like vanilla and brown sugar there. Mid palate was this big swell of spice. It's a cinnamon, warm, baking spice kind of experience. So not like a rye spice, because this is pretty low rye, but a nice blooming sort of cinnamon spice sitting at the center of it. I think the finish was pretty quick there. I didn't notice much of it. I didn't focus on it particularly, so we'll go back and we'll focus on that. And then because that was my first sip of the day, it definitely showed its 121 proof. Wasn't overwhelming, but certainly had a good heat and lingering heat to it. So let's go back in now for a second sip, and actually let's check on the nose real quick as it's had time to open up. Okay, I think more vanilla coming through now. Cherry is really strong. A little bit of like a roasted note, so like a roasted barrel char note, certainly sitting in there somewhere. And there's that warm cinnamon on the nose too. I'm getting that translated now over from the palate, probably back toward the nose a little bit. That warm cinnamon, vanilla, cherry spice. Really nice. Really, really good nose overall. And the fact that it's not astringent and all inviting, really cool. All right, let's go into the palate for a second sip here, pick out some new flavors. Cheers. Man, that cinnamon note is really prominent and sort of overtakes the whole thing in the middle. Really nice blooming spice to it. It's not overwhelming, but it kind of unfolds on the mid to back palate. I will say, front palate and finish, I'm not picking up as much. The front palate is lighter with like a general sweetness to it, like a vanilla sweetness. Middle is that cherry, cinnamon, brown sugar, blooming explosion. And then the finish, I just get sort of that simmering heat from the cinnamon sort of spice. But in terms of like a caramel or a barrel char or roasted note or an oaky leather tobacco, any of that sticking around, I'm not feeling as much of it. I do get a little touch of oak, maybe a little leather there, but like not so much that I'm definitively saying the finish is long or flavorful. I think the finish might be the weakest part of this actually. So let's actually go back in for a third sip and focus on that finish and really see what we pick out there. Cheers, everybody. Okay, so focusing on the finish and the sort of full progression there. Front palate, pretty light and just general sweetness. Mid palate explodes. Cinnamon, cherry, brown sugar. Finish does die off and tempers down a lot, but the finish, what I got there was a good amount of sweet oak and some of that lingering cinnamon spice for sure, and heat. Just a touch of nuttiness. I actually think a little bit of nuttiness came through on the back palate and finish there for me. So overall, there's a little bit more complexity there to be picked out. I'm sure as it opens up, some of that will be drawn out too, but I have to give like super high marks to the mid palate here. Sort of the middle of the experience is what shines and has so much good punch to it, but the front and back end are much more subtle and sort of easy to look past or easy to sip on, I guess is another way to think about it. It's like it's not going to overwhelm you. It's not going to sort of dry out your mouth or stick around with any astringency. What sticks around is good and sweet and maybe even a touch nutty. So on my palate, that's sort of the full experience of this batch of Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. I've heard people saying similar things about how the front palate and the finish aren't stellar, or that the overall experience is something they call more of an easy sipper than a hefty Elijah Craig Barrel Proof offering like people are used to. All I can say is that it is really good whiskey that's easy to sip on. The nose is spectacularly inviting and sweet and sugary. The palate explodes with good punch and flavor, but the experience is a little bit quicker than maybe people are expecting from an Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, which I understand. Here's the thing. With Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, it's 12-year-old non-chill filtered stuff. You're always going to get a really solid experience, especially if you can get it around retail for 65, 70 bucks. Always worth the buy, incredible value. But everyone is not going to be a knock your socks off like whiskey of the year contender, but they're basically all in that top 25 to 30 whiskeys you could have in a year, and certainly in a top 5 list for most people in terms of what they can actually get their hands on. So I give Elijah Craig Barrel Proof Batch B522 for sure hutch worthy. Definitely recommend trying to go out and get one yourself, but maybe not the best Elijah Craig Barrel Proof that's ever existed. Just a really solid whiskey. All right, everybody, I think that about wraps up what I have to say today about Elijah Craig Barrel Proof Batch B522. Put in the comments below what your experience has been with Elijah Craig Barrel Proof this year, both with the A122, the B522 now if you've been able to get your hands on it. Looking forward to hearing all that you have to say and starting a great conversation. And until I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey and cheers.